Hello, everybody, and I have a special guest today. So, for those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Allison Holly, and I offer channeling and awakening guidance. And I have a beautiful guest with me today, Mahadeva. Hi, Mahadeva.
Hi, how are you? Very good to see you.
Good. And you had me a guest on your YouTube channel, and I thought instead of reposting that, I wanted to because that was just me talking the whole time. I wanted to dive into your story. Um, Part of why you originally reached out was because we have so much in common. And once I started looking at some of the things that you share, I felt so much resonance. I mean, several, even last night, as I said, I watched one of your live stream recordings where you offer a meditation, a guided meditation. And I'd love to hear more about that. But just several things that you said, even in there, I thought there are things that you say that I don't hear a lot of other people say. And yet it resonates so deeply, or it's something that I've received as well. So, kind of without further ado, I'd love to just turn it over to you and maybe have you share some of your story, how this all started for you.
I would love to. And again, thanks for reciprocating and asking me on your channel. I appreciate it. I did. I reached out to you basically because of what you just said, that, my experiences, there's something about it that's unique and different that I am always going on YouTube looking to see if there's somebody says something that I can relate to because I was feeling, very alone in some way.
Mm,
So I I didn't believe in any of this. Now I was a spiritual teacher. I taught qigong and meditation. I even did things like, I did exorcisms years ago, and I did energy martial arts and shamanism and out of body experiences. I did all that. So it wasn't that I didn't believe in, anything spiritual. I just didn't believe in extraterrestrials. I didn't believe in channeling. I didn't believe in any of it. To me, it
wow.
was just kind of new agey woo woo. And part of the reason for that, which is now serving me, is that I want to be able to have physical experience. I want to have an experience I cannot talk myself out of.
Hmm.
So, that's why I got into very powerful energy work, but it was through martial arts. You can't just, say, oh, you have to actually, is the energy going to
Yes.
actually do something? And that's really a way to get connected to the energy. And then you can take it into your meditations. And so that's kind of what happened with me. Um, and then 2.5 years ago, June of 2022, I was getting a really weird feeling about the whole pandemic situation. And I was
Mm.
starting to get this weird feeling like I started going to this weird paranoid place of aliens are doing this to us. And I'm like, where is that coming from? What is that? And so this is what I do. I did research to disprove it. That's how
Mm.
I know something is real when I've gone out of my way to disprove it and I can't. Then I know, I can trust better my experience. So I did that, and I came across Dr. Stephen Greer's movies.
Okay.
The what do you call that? The Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
Hmm.
And so just to give people a little bit of background, what had happened with me is I went as far as I could go with human teachers. Doesn't mean that I was the most advanced. It just means I couldn't find anybody. And I had gotten to the end of my teachers that I had trained with. And so I've always had this feeling of there's got to be more. There's got to be
Yeah.
more. I want more powerful stuff, right? So when I saw this movie, I saw some of those crazy photographs of people getting, these beings wrapping around their head. And, it was like, if these beings exist, that's what I'm looking for. And so I
Mm.
said, I'm going to prove to myself whether or not this is real. So I started doing CE5 and I did it by myself. And actually, the first two times I made contact, but I was so dense, I was so protected that I couldn't allow myself to believe it. Now, if I hadn't
Mm.
been videotaping it and recording it, I wouldn't have picked up some of the evidence that I didn't see. For instance, on the first time that I did it, lights showed up down the beach and I videotaped them, but then I told myself, well, it's probably just flashlights. And then looking at the video, it was black. It was at night down here on the beach here in Florida at night. And this light was going around my body. Now, you can't tell by looking at it. It looks like just, like a firefly. But I know where the camera was set up and that my body was, laying down on the beach chair. And so the light was actually going around my body and probing
Wow.
me. And I went, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
And then I heard at one point, if people know anything about CE5, lots of times you bring a radio and you'll turn the ham radio on and you'll like broadcast things. I mean, they don't need that, but we think they do. So, we broadcast tones because we think their ships are, looking around like Mr. Spock,
Right.
where are they?
Tuning into
Oh,
just one bandwidth.
yeah. Oh,
That's
there he
our
is.
perception. Right. Right.
So I was doing all that. And the truth is I felt them there, but of course I didn't believe it. And so I'm like into the thing, and then the radio goes off, and I know that
Mm.
that's impossible. I know enough to know that nobody on another radio can make those sounds the way it comes out like that. So I'm like,
Mm.
and then I got scared, and and I said out loud, I said, "Okay." First I said, "Are you here?" And I didn't hear anything. And when I went back and looked at the video, you can hear a response. Yes.
Wow.
And the crazy part is it sounded like my voice. Really, so anyway, after that,
Wow.
I was absolutely determined. I said, I have to have an experience. If this is real, I have to, and I made it clear to them. I said, I'm going to take this as far as it can go.
Yeah.
Even if it kills me, I have to experience this. I have to prove it or prove that it doesn't exist.
Hmm.
And then that's when this guy showed up. And I did it one more time, and that being showed up, and the power was undeniable. People want to go watch it on my channel, How I Became an Extraterrestrial. You can hear me on the verge of tears because I was so afraid, not because of anything negative. It was the energy was beautiful, and if I hadn't consciously been thinking, I just saw this red mantis being in my mind, and I can feel something touching my head. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been scared, but
Yeah.
scared out of my mind.
So I
Anyway,
want to pause just for a moment. So the
yeah,
way that it showed up at this time was a strong inner vision. Is that what you were saying?
well, the first thing, yeah, all three of the times I had this experience where I had like a telepathic fantasy,
Mm.
and so I told myself I'm making this up. I've come
Mm.
to realize, and I write about this in my book, I've come to realize that telepathic communication to a higher dimensional being demands that you use uh, your imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, as a channeler, you know that
Yes.
is the doorway, and but we can't tell all the time. But one of the ways you can tell you're having a telepathic communication with an actual light being is, first off, you'll feel energy, feel all kinds of energy, maybe in your body or around. If your radio goes off, that's a sign they're here. And of course, they only do that to get our attention and make us realize it's not us just making things up.
Right.
And then a thought will come and it'll feel like you're imagining it,
Yeah.
but there will be something about it that maybe doesn't sit right. You go,
Yeah.
uh,
My experience was, why would I imagine that?
yeah, yeah,
How did I come up with that? Or there was something that was just beyond imagination. You can feel the subtle
Yeah.
difference. And sometimes it's more overt, but
Yeah.
sometimes it is subtle. Yeah.
Right. Right. And so as we were talking earlier, these guys, they're very direct.
Yeah.
And so they tell you things that, I didn't make that up. That
Yeah.
didn't come from me. And then afterwards, one of the ways is that this is something that was very interesting for me was that as I would have these communication, these telepathic experiences or visionary experiences, and then afterwards I would be telling myself, I think I made that up, or but
Mm.
then the next day, your brain talks to you like that was a fact.
Yes.
Like you go, yeah, they told me this. Wait, why did I come up with that?
Mm.
But if it's a real fantasy, the next day you forget it.
Right.
When it's an actual telepathic communication, it gets stronger over time, not weaker,
Mm.
which is anyway, it's very strange and weird stuff. But how I got into it was that I wanted to go further than I could talking, having a human teacher. And this being did, he made it very clear he was going to initiate me into his spirituality. And so for the
Mm.
next 6, 8 months, every single day, during the day, at night, they would show up in my room at night. They
Mm.
would work on my body, crazy amounts of energy. I mean, it was blissful. And at the same time, I thought I was completely losing my mind. I woke up in the middle of the night and all this energy, and my foot was up in the air and it was being
Wow.
twisted, and they were balancing something in my body. And but the really crazy stuff, I mean, I don't know how crazy you want to get in this discussion, but
Oh,
if you,
although I think just to kind of pause on that question, something that I've received recently is that talking about and sharing about and channeling about communication with our interplanetary family and all of these beings is one of the most important things that we can do right now
yeah, I agree.
because it's coming through so strong. So get weird with it. Share all the
Okay.
things because
Yeah.
somebody's going to be like, yep, I remember that, or I identify with that, or oh, that's what that was. So, yeah.
Well, so all of that is going on, which is weird enough, right? What started happening with me was almost from the beginning. I mean, I want to say like from the very beginning. From the very beginning, and it started with this gentleman, and of course, other beings would show up, but he was like my main teacher for a while. He would show up, and he came. It was one day I was laying in that couch right there, and I knew that he was, he came through the wall. Of course, I can't physically see him, right? But you can feel this energy, and the energy.
Yeah.
Again, I've done every single type of human energy practice: Kundalini yoga, qigong, Tai
Yeah.
Chi, African shamanism. I've done all that. I know what all those energies feel like.
Yes.
There was an energy that came in that was like nothing I'd ever felt.
Wow.
And my body and my mind literally had no idea what to do with it. And at
Right.
first, it felt like a pressure on my chest. And I'm thinking, I can't breathe. And I go, no, I can breathe. It just feels like there's a pressure. And then I started realizing it was an electromagnetic energy.
Mm.
And that's what led me down to really start looking at the fact that this is interdimensional. And, that's a
Mhm.
whole other subject. But what this being started saying to me, I thought I was going crazy because of the experiences, but then what he said to me made me think I was going crazy.
Yeah.
The first thing he said, and the first thing he said was, well, the first thing he said was, you are a probability. And I
Mm.
said, of course, yes, I'm a probability. We are all possibilities. And he was like, no, no, no. You are a probability. And he repeated it over and over and over. And I
Mm.
realized what he was saying was he was teaching me about how we manifest our reality. We like to think that there are separate timelines. And that's a helpful way to think because you think of switching timelines. But what he was saying was that this moment is it.
This is it.
And
Yes.
outside of this moment are infinite numbers of probabilities.
Yes.
And I realized he's talking physics, but he's talking about, consciousness.
Hmm.
And so what we do is where we're focusing our emotions, our thoughts, our commitments, we're seeking out all of these little probabilities. We grab onto one and it becomes our reality. And they stack up, as we pass through them. And our experiences, we're on a path. And so there's a
Yes.
reality in front of me and then another one, but there's nothing in front of us.
Yeah.
Nothing. We're building that bridge as we go. And so that was his first thing. Now that of course is okay. But the next thing I'm going to tell
Mm.
you is when things went absolutely bonkers. And I didn't tell anybody for a year and a half. I kept
Mhm.
this to myself because I thought I was going crazy. He said to me, "We want to make you king of earth."
Mm.
What?
Mm.
How is that even possible? How can one person? That's what I'm thinking. Now, I've come to realize you don't talk like that to these people. So
Right.
I'm thinking to myself, that's not even, my mind is going like this isn't reality.
Hmm.
And, and he could tell that I was really struggling with it. And he said, we can give it to someone else if you want. I said, no, 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 I want it. I just don't understand it. I don't know what you're talking about. And so he would show up every day and he would keep telling me this. And then it turned into your, and I'd say, okay, I'm going to be king of earth. And then he'd say, no, you are king of earth. I'm like, oh, okay. I know for a fact that's not the case. I mean, I have to pay taxes. I have to go to the store. I mean, I have to, I have to pay rent. What do you mean?
Mm.
And then it turned into, you've always been king of earth. Now
Uh,
that's the first thing. It got so much weirder after that. And
okay, bring it.
it didn't
Because that is a
stop.
lot.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I mean. Is like I'm crazy.
Mm.
Normal people don't think like. And I was talking with a therapist. I'm like, am I crazy? And he
Wow.
says, crazy people don't question. He says you're questioning this. So he wasn't saying it was true or not. He was just saying you're not deluded because deluded people are really attached to their belief and they're defensive about it. And he says you're not. I said no, I'm not.
Incredible therapist that you have.
Yeah, well, he was
Yeah.
very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it started, what started happening after that, and I can get into other stuff, but that's just enough to know that what started happening was that as I was taking these journeys, I was going to higher and higher dimensions, and I
Hmm.
was meeting with other beings. Forget about the extraterrestrials were the butlers. They were the people that
Hmm.
then started taking me to the deities and the gods, and they started telling me stuff. But what they started telling me was who I was outside of third dimensional Earth.
Okay.
And that when you expand into that to you're a deity, we have
Hmm.
this experience that we're just these tiny little beings. Our religions tell us that we're born into these little bodies and we have this and God's will and karma and sin, and we don't understand that that is the complete opposite of what it is.
Yeah.
That we are deities, we are the
Hmm.
most powerful deities,
Hmm.
and we have chosen to come into this third dimensional experiment, and it's a self-contained experiment. That's why our scientists look out into space and they can't see anything.
Yeah.
They can't see any life anywhere. There's no they'll say there's no life on any of the planets in our solar system. And I can tell you there absolutely is, but not on our third dimensional level.
Not on our dimension.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I've seen it too. Yeah. It's a
So
dense dimension. It's a dense experience. It's very
yeah,
different than, yeah,
yeah.
very.
So I mean, I'm skipping through a bunch of stuff because it would take weeks to go through all of them. But they there was one experience where I was lots of times what will happen is the ETs will show up and they'll
Okay.
say, we want to introduce you to somebody. And okay. So astrally, I'll go on their ship and they'll take me some other place in the cosmos, or they will take me to a higher dimension or, something like that. So this happened one day. So we want to take you somewhere. We want you to meet some people. I said, okay. So they take me to this place and I don't know where it is. It looks like it's a planet somewhere. And there's this megalithic, like, uh, structure that's like a temple structure. It's really amazing. And I'm like being led down this staircase like I'm a really honored guest. And I get to the
Mm.
center of this, uh, this whatever this is, this ritual megalithic structure. And these beings are there, and they're just these beings of light that go all the way up into infinity. And they're
Mm.
very powerful, and they're surrounding me, and there's Mahadeva welcome, and and so they start talking to me, and they're doing things that don't make sense to me. Like they start saying to me, they start asking me, so Mahadeva, how should we bring the ascension event?
Mm.
And I'm like, what do you mean? I thought you were going to tell me. And they're like talking to each other and talking to me. And they say, you don't remember, do you? I'm like, what? Remember what? I said, you're one of us. Earth was your idea.
Wow.
And they start explaining to me that I'm a member of this council. The, they call themselves the guardians of the dimensions or consciousness or something like that.
Okay.
I want to say Guardians of the Galaxy, but then it sounds like that movie.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's how they called themselves. And
Yeah.
when they said, you're one of us, all of a sudden I like rose, and then I was one of these giant, you know, streams of light going into infinity. And they said, we were looking for ways to increase consciousness. And we create these different worlds that have different, what we would call densities, where people can learn and souls can learn. And we really wanted to find one that was for the most powerful of energies, consciousness gods. And
Mm.
they said, you came up with this idea for Earth. And
Wow.
you said, it had to be so difficult that there was a risk that people could get trapped.
Mm.
And they said, we didn't like that. And we discussed that back and forth. And you convinced us that it had to be so real and so intense that people could risk losing their souls. And then they said, and then you chose to go down because you said, since this is my idea, I have to go. And
Wow.
so from their perspective, I was just showing back up to a meeting again. And
And they
I
were like,
didn't,
hey, it worked. You forgot.
yeah. I mean, that's just one of many. Again, I could go on and on and
Yeah.
on, but the point I'm trying to get to is that my mission now is to get people to awaken to who they really are.
Hmm.
Because that's, we call it an awakening, but it's not just an awakening, oh, then I'm a spiritual being. No, it's a heck of a lot more. Every single one of us is an incredibly powerful deity. And we have this experience of life as it is. It's very difficult, it's very tough. And once we get here, we complain about it.
Hmm.
And people say, why would God do this to me? Or, and then people start creating this is a prison planet, and, we're being siphoned by beings or their energy, and we're forced to reincarnate to feed. And
Mm.
so, unfortunately, that is how it feels, but that's not what it is.
Right. Right.
And if we're able to take full responsibility, which starts with the truth, which is no soul gets here and is allowed to come here if they aren't the most powerful of deities in the universe.
I
And
love that so much. Yeah.
the other beings have said this to me, light beings, powerful beings, and I'm not going. I don't.
Mm.
I can't. I can't. Today I was going to go surfing, big swell out there. I'm not as young as I used to be. And I said, I'm not going out there. That's what these guys are doing. They're like, I'm not doing
Yeah.
that. Forget it.
Yeah.
So if we can accept, you're right, this is very difficult. It's very painful. And you feel isolated and alone and you feel
Mm,
powerless. That is the design. And apparently I designed it that way. I designed it to be a world where it would be extremely difficult. And because only then can you really, truly, authentically go, I'm going to do this. I'm not
mm,
going to let anything stop me. I'm a spiritual being. I'm not going to give up on that. And then you start figuring out how to manifest and create your reality. You start learning how to operate fully from your authenticity, from your soul. And what people don't know is that when we do that, we're all by ourselves. Nobody sees us. And there's just a
yeah.
moment where we make those kinds of decisions. You know, you're in prison, you're homeless, and you make a decision like that. I kid you not, there are thousands of light beings that get up and cheer and they clap
Wow.
and they are so grateful
Mm,
because every time we do that down here, just one experience of taking full responsibility and making a decision to do something and accomplish and grow, every other conscious being in the universe goes up another level.
hmm.
The
Yeah, that light
deities,
just.
yeah,
Hmm.
like Shiva himself goes, he bows because
Wow.
you just made him more conscious.
Wow.
Anyway, I've been doing a lot of talking, but
I love it. Hmm. As you're talking, I am thinking of the people who generally watch these on my channel and how important it is for them to hear this, to hear it in another way, because something that comes through a lot when I'm offering channeling and things like that is, you know, you are God. you are, you matter, you're important. And I think that you're putting it in a way that can be very activating for people. There's such a deep level of truth. Also, I want to mention, and this isn't something that I personally have witnessed in my own channeling, but the Guardians, when I went through my awakening, I heard of Dolores Cannon, and she has a book called The Guardians. So when you
oh,
brought that up, that, yeah, right, I love it. She was just very much a guide for me at the beginning of my awakening because I hadn't encountered anyone else who was saying that they were a star seed. I was talking to a lot of people and saying, it's my first time here. And they would say, what are you talking about? That doesn't exist. And so I said, oh, I want to do past life regressions for people, but for people who have lived on other planets. And I told one person this, and she said, oh, I have a book for you. Have you heard of Dolores Cannon? And I just gobbled up several of her books. One that I didn't read, though, was The Guardians. And it's all about the creators of this entire beautiful experiment illusion playground. So,
interesting. Yeah, synchronicity. There's been a lot of those too.
mm,
And a lot of where I will be, you know, again, I'm in meditation. I think I'm having imagining things. I'm feeling energy, so I know something's happening and all that. And then beings will do things like they will tell me a very specific name.
mm-hmm,
Like for instance, I went to go again. I was invited. A light being showed up and said, "We want to introduce you to somebody." And I said, "Okay." And they take me through, you know, all these, you know, different dimensional doorways and things. And I'm like, and I end up at this place where like looking into what looks like almost like you know, a stage. You know, there's like a stage, and then there's this something, there's like this square thing in the background, and half of it is bright white, and then the
mm,
other half is dark. And the first being that comes out is this beautiful being, just complete light. And she starts talking to me. She's picking me up, hugging me, and kissing me. And she's telling me that she's my mother and I'm her son, and she created me. And then she says, "Your father wants to talk to you." go over to the side that's all dark, and this is this being, and there's like sparks everywhere, and he's telling me all kinds of stuff. And at some point, I get this feeling to ask him his name, and
Mm.
this guy's really powerful. And because they said the first thing they said is, "We are the gods that the gods worship." So right,
Ah,
okay, this is a big deal. And so I'm like a little, I don't know why, it just came out against my will, supposedly, and I asked him his name. And he said, Tahunta. And I
okay.
went to myself, I went, that's a nonsense syllable. I'm making this up. And then he
Mm.
says, Tarhunt. And again, I'm like, and he says, go look it up.
Mm.
And when we were done, I was done with that meditation. I went and looked it up, and I'm like, I am absolutely certain I'm typing it in, nothing's going to come up. Wouldn't you know it? The first thing that comes up is this is the oldest storm god in human history from the Hittite religion. And
Wow.
both names are him, Tahunta
Wow.
and Tarhunt. They're both the same guy. They're just different. And I'm like, there's no way I could have made that up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know I didn't know that. I know a lot of stuff, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that's just one example that and so in the meditations that we do on my channel, my goal is to specifically get them connected to light beings. I
Can you
mean,
dive into what these meditations are, for
yeah,
everybody who's not
yeah, it's
experienced?
real simple. I mean, I can teach it right now. It takes
Yeah.
half a second. It's really just
And
uh,
also why you offer them, kind of
okay,
the whole background
yeah,
on that.
thank you.
Yeah.
A bunch of reasons for that. So it's a very simple technique. It's the same technique that's used in Dr. Stephen Greer's um, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, human initiated contact with extraterrestrials. And one of the things that's different is that he makes it sound like you really have to see everything perfectly. And I've come to find out that's not true. You just have to have the intent. That's it.
The intention.
That's
Yes.
all. And so you imagine, you do some deep breathing or whatever it is to get yourself relaxed, meditation, qigong, yoga, I don't care. And then you imagine that you're coming out of your body. I imagine myself coming out of my chest, and I imagine seeing my body below. Again, I don't do it perfectly. I'm not able, but my body's down there, whatever. And I imagine myself going up through the roof, going through the atmosphere out into interplanetary space. And then once I'm out there, I just simply ask, is there anybody who would like to communicate with me? Is there
Mm.
anybody out here? And if some people are scared of that, so you can put a qualifier, is there anybody out here who loves me that wants to
Mhm.
communicate? So it started like that. Now, since my first experience after doing that was like visceral and physical, like they were in the room,
Yeah.
I could feel them come into the room. That's what I was doing for a really long time. So I would go out and I would say, does anybody want to talk to me? Here's my address, like they need it. Here's my address,
Love
and
that.
here's where I live. I'm waiting for you. And then I would imagine coming back into my body, and I would stay in a meditative state, maybe chant a mantra, and I would wait because, again, I have to feel it. And sure enough, sometimes it would take a couple seconds, sometimes it would take 10 minutes, but at
Mhm.
some point, some powerful energy would come into the room, and you
Right.
can feel it. It's like there's
Yes.
no denying it. And
Yes.
then the communications would come and the energy would come. So I like that because it takes people out of that place that where you think you're just imagining things. Now,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. People have been doing that for centuries. You're a channeler. You do that naturally. I had to train myself to allow myself to have that experience because I was just too practical about it. If I can't
Yeah.
see or feel it, it's not real. I'm making it up. Now I'm able to do it because they've cracked me open. Now I know to go with it. But I I encourage people to do that because you can't second guess it. I mean, you will. People will. They'll think they're going crazy. But what they won't be able to say is, I didn't feel anything, you
And
know?
I think that is so key because um the communication is not, it's not just telepathic. It's full, it's the full energetic experience. You could say full body or full aura. It's all of it. We're not just being communicated with in this one little center. There's so, it's a full
Yeah,
capacity experience. And I think also the fullness of that is something new. It's, our imagination sort of resides in the mind, but this is a full
yeah.
experience.
Well, I've come to the belief that what has happened to me wouldn't have happened 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And the reason I mean, because it was, maybe I thought everybody was going to have my experience. I've come to find out that that's not the case.
Mm.
And I'm glad you mentioned it because I'm very verbal. So
Yeah.
I'm going to have the energy, but then I'm going to have an intellectual experience. It has to come
Right.
into words, pictures a little bit, but mostly words. I'm very
Right.
verbal. So other people aren't. Some people have,
Right.
whatever their connection is going to be.
Absolutely.
And so I'm glad you pointed that out. And of course, it seems to make sense. The reason why that's true for me is because I'm going to verbally teach this to people.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
get to have a verbal experience. But, it doesn't mean anything to me if I don't also have the physical experience, at least some of the time.
Yeah.
Um, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sure it'll come
Um,
back to me.
yeah. Well, diving into why you've created these meditations that
Ah,
you do them twice a week, you live stream them on your channel. I'll make sure that everything's linked in the description box. But so you do these live stream meditations, and you were starting to explain what the
thank you.
meditations are.
Thank you. This
Yes.
is one of the things that happens. I go off on tangents and I can't find my
That's
words.
great. That's great.
There's so many things going on in my head at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, so early on, okay, so I'm having all these crazy experiences. I had a dream. It was a shamanic dream, or the ETs were coming to me in a dream. So it wasn't a normal dream. And in this dream, I saw a worldwide event that changed everything.
Mm,
And it was very clear that something was going to happen. It seemed to be like it might be something in the sky, something that everybody would see, and it was going to change the whole world. And religion was going to be basically deleted and replaced with actual spiritual connection. And it would happen, throughout the world.
yes.
So I'm thinking this is going to happen tomorrow. Like I come out of that,
Mm.
and I'm like, oh my, when you've been expanded like that, and
Isn't that
I'm certain it's coming tomorrow. And I'm telling people, I'm not going to be here in a week, and I was dead
yeah,
serious. And
yeah.
and so
Time is confusing. I want to interject, like, time is confusing when it comes to these things because we're witnessing it in the now
yeah,
as it operates outside of this dense dimension. So I get it. There are things that I'm like, how has that not happened yet? That was right here,
yeah.
you know?
I've got, I've got so many of those where the message is tomorrow, this is going to happen.
Right.
Tomorrow comes by and then maybe a month, 6 months, a year later, and they're like, yeah, that's what
Yes.
we said.
That's what we
Tomorrow, next
said.
year, 10
It's a
years.
very different landscape. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So this
so,
event.
okay. So I saw, thank you, because I went off a tangent again. All right. So I saw this event and I thought it was coming. Thought it was going to be tomorrow and it didn't come. And I started talking about it on a live stream on my channel. And I said, I think I'm making stuff up. And somebody says, no, 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 that's a real thing. It's called the event. It's called
Mm.
the awakening. It's called the solar flash. And I went, as I always do. And I went and looked it up. And so so I went back into meditation and I called my friends and I said, so what is this event going to be? Is it going to be a fleet of spaceships? Because that's the only thing I can imagine, that
Right.
spaceships come and then ETs land and everybody goes, oh, and they had the experience that I had. That's what I thought. And I said, is it going to be a fleet of spaceships? And the answer was no. It's
Mm.
going to be a series and this is a quote, a series of solar waves of love that, I don't talk like that. Series of solar waves
I
of
talk
love.
like that.
Yeah, I'm too macho. I can't talk
Yeah.
like that. So a series of solar waves of love that are going to penetrate the earth and shift everything up to the next level. And I went,
Incredible.
no, I'm like, I don't know what any of that means.
Mm.
And then that was probably 6 months before we started having all of those solar storms that started hitting.
Do you remember when the oh, now I'm at a loss for words, the graphing of the solar waves and the way that the planet responds to it? Do you remember when those looked like sacred geometry? This was about maybe a year ago when the graph of the begins with an S. I'm gonna have to look it up here. It was just so beautiful. I just pulled this up because I'm learning how to read the what do they call it? Oh, it's I don't have it on my queue right now, but Schumann resonance.
Ah,
Yes. And so I occasionally check that. Do you remember when it looked like sacred geometry? It was just, I mean, I was just bawling. It was so beautiful.
I don't remember that specific experience, but I definitely remember when everything started massively shifting.
Just off the charts.
Yeah. And it was, I can tell you the day that it started. The day that it started was December 21st,
Mm,
2022. And
okay.
they were telling me what this series of solar waves of love and the solar flash and all that stuff. And, so I was prepared for something. I didn't know what. And then one night I went to bed and being showed up and said, I got to take you somewhere. And I said, okay.
Mm,
So they took me to this, what looked like amphitheater, and it was filled with a bunch of astral bodies, like a bunch of, not just from Earth, like from other planets. And they're on the stage. My brain is putting it together best it can. I don't know what it really was. That's how my brain put it together.
yes.
That there on the stage was some light beings, and they said, "We're all glad you're here. It's very important you're here. We've chosen you to be here because you're going to be representatives." And then they said, "Tomorrow's the day. It
Wow.
starts tomorrow. Remember that. Remember what we're telling you." All right. So, of course, as I always do, I go, that was an interesting meditation. I have no idea if that's true or not. And sure enough, that morning, I woke up to what felt like some kind of explosion. First, I thought a being had showed up in my room because it was that same feeling. Boom, this very powerful, warm feeling, and I'm like, "Hello, is anybody there?" And nobody was there, and then I realized it's the sun. My
Wow.
body's responding to the sun rising. It's never done that before.
Wow.
And I went out and I could see and feel that all of this, the sun was doing something it had never done. And I was feeling all this energy and I was giddy and all the DMT in my brain was, spiking off the charts. And so I knew something was up and I went, oh, that's right. They said
They
tomorrow's,
did say tomorrow.
yeah, this time they were
That
right.
time it was right. They looked
This
at a
time,
human calendar.
yeah. And so from that point on, I can feel when we're getting a solar storm. I can feel it. And
Incredible.
for a while I'd be getting them and I would just go into these, I mean, I would be so blissed out. And
Yeah.
and the communications were off the chart because
Mm.
I've come to find out that light beings, extraterrestrials, light beings, gods, all that, they can communicate with us better when there's when the magnetic field on the earth is weaker. So
That
at
makes sense.
night, that's why at night, people see ghosts and talk to, all that stuff is
That
because the
makes sense.
the magnetic field is weaker. But when we get hit with a solar storm, the solar radiation also weakens the electromagnetic field. So
Okay.
those are the best times. If you know that a storm is going to hit, a solar storm, find out when and then do your meditations. You'll be able to connect much more deeply. But that's when
Okay.
it started. And
Hmm.
then if you remember, that's when everything started changing. Everything started
Oh, yeah.
shifting really, really intensely. And now look at where we are now. I mean, we're
Yes.
on the verge of, I mean, we're on the verge of a new world. I mean,
Yeah,
things are
absolutely.
this close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the meditation, I'm trying to answer your question. So the meditation, so when that first wave hit of energy, I was looking into this thing called the solar flash and the solar flash event, and I thought it was going to be that, and I was really kind of obsessed with it. So I was talking to the light beings, and I'm like, "When is this going to come?" And they said, "When you decide." Oh, come on,
Okay, this makes
you got
sense.
to be kidding me! Every time I'd ask, "Okay, when is it going to come?" When you decide.
Mm.
So I said, all right, fine. I'm deciding now it's coming. So I had this idea, I say now I don't know where it came from, but now I do. And so I did a live stream and I said, well, we're going to do this meditation. And by the way, this guy gave me a mantra.
Yes.
Mantra is just a simple sound, huar. And so I had that, and I knew that had something to do with what was happening. I knew it had something to do with the sun. He had really taught me exactly how to intone it and all that, and didn't tell me why. But I said, so I started doing it. Very powerful. So I started doing it. So I did this live stream, and I thought, what, I'm just going to take people to the sun, and then we're going to chant this, and we're going to send energy to the earth. And bear in mind, when I did this, I was starting to come apart because of
Mm.
the experiences were so intense, and my third dimensional reality was completely coming apart. And I was kind of like, I wasn't, I wasn't doing so good. So I did this meditation, and of course, it was powerful. I knew it would be. I've always been able to create powerful meditations. That's nothing new. So I did that. And we went to the sun and we chanted it and we send energy to the earth. And I closed off the meditation and they showed up. And they're like, it was in this very room right here. And they were like around the table and they were just screaming at me, thank you so much. Thank you. You have no idea what you've done. And they were like, I've never experienced anything like that. They were
Wow.
so happy and they were thanking me, profusely thanking me. And I'm like, what I do?
Right.
I just meditated. And they said, you have no idea what you've accomplished. And
Wow.
then we had this huge solar storm, like right at that moment, or then, within hours. And they said, you did that. You did
Wow.
that.
Okay.
And so I didn't forget that. But then what happened after that is again, I started and I just needed to stop for a while because my third dimensional brain was just coming apart. And then it had to have been a year or so later. This is when I was in Australia, and they showed up. Beings showed up. Now, bear in mind, I knew that I was supposed to do this meditation, but I'm putting it off because, I'm telling whatever I'm telling myself, but I was in resistance to that,
Yeah.
whatever that meant. It just meant something that I didn't feel ready for.
Hmm.
And these beings showed up, and they said, they said, you are going to leave this earth and you're going to fly around like Superman and you are going to, people will see you in the sky and they're doing this crazy thing and you're going to bring the ascension event. And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. You're scaring the crap out of me.
Mm.
I took it literally. I thought that I was going to go out on the balcony and fly like
Ah,
Superman. Because they don't, to them, there's no such thing as,
it's not, that is a really important point. There's not, that's why time is different. I've also had channelings where it's like, it'll be in 50 years. And then I had a different guide come in and say, it's 300 human years, like their interpretation is different. Um, it is like it's the way that if you put a stick in water and how it refracts or how it bends, it's just a different perception. There's no concept of
yeah.
you know
Well, and when they talk, they're talking from their reality. Now,
yes.
what we don't realize is that from their perspective, our reality is the illusion.
Oh yes.
There is the real one.
Right.
So they were talking like this, and I'm like, I don't understand. This is frightening me. I don't,
Yes.
and so they said, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And they came back 2 days later, they said the same thing. And I'm like, you guys, this is scaring me. I don't understand. And there's huge amounts of energy hitting me. And they're like so excited. They said, you're gonna, blah, 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 flying through the air and sending energy to earth and changing it. And I'm taking it literally. Like I'm in my third dimensional body. I'm gonna grow a
Yeah.
cape and fly out. And they said, don't worry. When the time comes, you'll know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Came back a couple days later, same thing. And at the end, they repeated it. So when they tell me the same thing twice, I know something's up.
Mm.
They came back and said the same thing. Don't worry. When the time comes, you will know exactly what to do. And I said, okay. And then I don't know how much longer it was, maybe a month later, all of a sudden I knew.
Mm.
I knew that my main purpose right now in this life is to lead these meditations and to take people out into, outside of earth and to chant these mantras and send these intentions. You've done them, so you know what they're like.
Yes.
And they're all about absolutely shifting earth to the next level and taking us to the what people call 5D.
Yeah.
And the first, I don't know, it was early on when I was doing this. And now remember what they said to me. They said, you're going to fly through the air like Superman. And at one point they said, and the world is going to see you in the sky, like I was, Jesus returning.
Ah, okay, I hear that.
So one of my students comes to me and sends me a picture because we were actually releasing solar storms. So if you remember a period
Yeah.
when a lot of solar storms, they were like right when we were doing it or right after we were doing it. And so we were actually chanting during one of these solar storms, and she lives far enough north that she was getting the northern lights, right? So she
Oh,
went out and took a picture and she sent it to me and she said, is this you? And there is in the solar storm, there's a face that looks like me doing this. And what's
mm,
weird is that when I was doing it, I wasn't trying to do it. In fact, I was trying to think of something else, but I was focusing on where the area that she lived in. And
mm-hmm,
and I kept on going, why am I seeing that? I wanted to see the whole world, but I was seeing like, her state. And
mm,
then the next day she sends me that picture and I'm like, that's what they said.
wow.
So they were literal. And at the same time, what they were saying was, what we don't realize is that when we go out in our astral bodies, from their perspective, we're physically there. We're real. And so what they were telling me is that you have no idea how powerful you are. Remember, we're deities.
Wow.
So when we do these meditations, the light beings that are there, for instance, if extraterrestrials are out there, what they're going to see from their higher dimensional perspective is from Earth, these giant, huge, some people are dragons. They come out and they start doing this meditation to change Earth. From their perspective,
Right,
that's the reality. From our perspective, we're just sitting here chanting. Maybe we can feel a
right.
lot of energy coming out. But we're living in the third dimensional video game. We're living in the dream.
Right,
That's the real world out there. And
right.
out there, we are more powerful than anything we could even begin to imagine. And the only thing we need to do is start to accept it and act on it.
Mm,
That's all that has to happen. And so I do these meditations because I've learned to take them literally. They said, you're going to bring the shift. You are going to go out there and you and people are going to meditate. And you're going to bring the solar flash event or whatever it is. They don't use those terms. I'm using my terms, but I've accepted it. And it's getting bigger and bigger and more intense as we do it. So there's a long answer to your question.
I love it. I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Um, One is why? Why are we bringing in this event? And the other, I'll just ask it now because in my internal awareness, it's related. How is it for you being a human in this experience? And I guess the reason that it's related is because the why, what will you be? What will we all be after this experience?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the question. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So there was two questions. Remind me the first one again.
Why are we creating this solar
Okay.
event?
So remind me of the second one, because again, I'll go off and I won't remember, but we'll see.
How do you be human through all of it?
So you hang on to that, and when I'm done, you can.
Okay.
All right. So why are we bringing this event? This has only finally come to my, now, bear in mind, when I started doing this, I didn't know why. I was just following directions.
Got it.
And the experiences were so intense. I mean, I've been on the verge of insanity for 2.5 years. It's only been recently, like right before I contacted you, everything came together. And now, even though, it still can be a challenge being in multiple dimensions, I'm able to do it and I know why. I know who
Yeah.
I am. So, but I didn't know when we were doing this. So they made it very clear. And it was extremely difficult to believe. One day, um, now the male beings and the female light beings, they're a little different. The female beings I like because when they come to tell me something, they don't tell me something. They'll show
Mm,
up. They're very flirtatious, just love pouring through me, and they'll very coyly ask me a question.
mm.
And the question was, in fact, I can feel them now. The question was, Mahadeva, and they're like all this lovey energy and they're flirting. Mahadeva, how would you feel if you were solely responsible for bringing the 5D ascension event? And
Mm.
of course, when a beautiful woman is at you, I would love that.
Of course.
I totally want to do that. And she goes, good, because you are.
You send in the feminine energy to make it
Yeah.
palatable.
Yeah. And of course, it's a question. It's not okay, you've been chosen, because
Yes.
that's what this guy does. You're
Oh,
king of earth, you know.
yeah.
How would you like it? And then, of course, so I'm sitting with that. I'm bringing the 5D Ascension event. Yeah, you, you're the one. You're going to do it. How the hell am I? And then of course, no, don't worry, you'll figure it out. And then the other thing happened. So I went, no.
Mm.
So that's why I started doing it, because I knew that's what had to be done, but I still didn't know why it had to be done. And now I do. So this came later. So again, put all this stuff together. It came to me early on after telling me I was going to be king of earth. No, you are king of earth. No, you always have been king of earth. So after I did um, the first, uh, sorry, I'm getting too many thoughts coming. When I did the first live guided meditation that was intense, and I stopped, and they were all happy. You have no idea what you've accomplished. Again, a feminine being shows up. I'm getting ready. I'm lying in bed, getting ready to go to sleep. A feminine being shows up, and she says, "You're gonna get an upgrade." And I'm thinking, I must have had a stupid look on my astral face, because she goes, "Now say thank you." And I go, "Thank you." And she leaves. And so I'm waiting. This being shows up. I've never felt anything anywhere near this powerful. He had to have been sixth, seventh, eighth dimension. He was enormously powerful. And he showed up. And I'm just going to tell the truth because I have to be transparent. And I know before I say it, it sounds incredibly egotistical, but other
Mm.
people are going to have their experiences. This being shows up and he says, because of what you just did, I'm now going to, you are now, see, my ego doesn't want me to remember. He says, you are now the supreme Lord of this universe.
Mm.
Now, bear in mind, he didn't just say it. It wasn't just like a thought came into my head. There was an energy behind it, and that energy made it true. I don't know if you can, maybe you know what I'm talking about, but it's his speech was not, I'm giving you an idea. His speech was he was creating it.
Yes.
And then it
Yes.
hit me, boom, with this energy. And I was in bed for a week. I couldn't move my right shoulder. I had to do all
Wow.
kinds of stuff. I mean, that energy just broke me. And it was really frightening.
Mm.
And so put that together. They know what's going on. I don't. I did this meditation. I'm now, you're going to blah, 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 blah. And so uh, then they come back later. I don't know how much later. Could have been days, weeks. I don't remember. That everything was all blurred back then. And this time, this whole council of beings shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you don't understand. You were once a very powerful king on earth. And this might make me emotional.
Mm.
He says, you were once a very powerful king on earth. And because of some of the things that you did, you laid the foundation for the dark force elite that are running the world now.
Mm.
And so it is your karmic duty to balance the imbalance you created.
Mm.
And I didn't, this was just information to me at that time. It's emotional to me now because I now remember more. I'm like,
Mm.
really? That's what I had. So that was again sometime in around June, July, August of 2022. And just probably 3 months ago. Remember, I'm holding this in my brain the whole time. It takes me this long to finally admit it that I was told this, and I start telling publicly, just so that I'm not holding any secrets, not because I think it's true or I need it to be true. It's just I can't hold on to this anymore.
Right.
I have to share it because other people are going to have their experiences. So with that, I'm sitting there, and from my left side, some beings show up. Now, normally, this guy talks to me, my right ear closes down. That's how I know, these guys are showing up. So there are other beings that show up on my left, and they're Pleiadians. So I've
Mm.
already known that Pleiadians come, they talk to me through my left side. So I'm lying here on my couch, and these beings show up, and they said, again, I might get emotional here.
Mm.
They said, do you remember when you first met us? And I got this feeling they're Pleiadians. And I said, are you Pleiadians? Bear in mind, I don't want to believe in Pleiadians. It's so,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's just so cringy. Everybody's talking about Pleiadians, and then everybody's, they're Andromedans, So
Yes.
when it's that specific, I get cringy because I think I'm making it up. So I say, are you Pleiadians? They say, yes. They said, we were your advisors. You were king of Atlantis,
Mm.
and we were your advisors. And we helped you create spiritual technology, which you spread all over the world, including the pyramids. And the pyramids were designed to be energy frequency capacitors that sent an energy field around the whole world
Yeah.
to keep people conscious. And they said, and if anybody, I don't have the graphic on me, but if on my channel I talk about it, the Sri Yukteswar's Yuga, not the normal yugas. People think yugas last for millions of years, like Kali Yuga lasts for millions of. It doesn't. It lasts for 24 to 26,000 years. That's how
Mhm.
long one
Yeah.
one way through the yugas are. So we were in Satya Yuga, 13,000 years ago. So there's four yugas. Satya Yuga means you're 100% connected uh, to God, and everybody was. That's why we have legends about wizards and dwarves and elves and fairies, because that was going on. People were walking around the earth, and beings were coming from other planets, and we lived in, that was a real thing. And that was
Right.
Satya Yuga. That was one. There's been many, but that was the last one, 13,000 years ago, is when it's then started to descend. So they said, we were advising you, and you started, and we helped you with these technologies. And then they said, and we advised you to stop using them, and you didn't listen to us. You
Mm.
refused to listen. It's going to be hard for me because I knew that Satya Yuga was ending, and I knew that we were going to start descending. And I couldn't tolerate that thought.
Mm.
And so I said, no, I'm not, I refuse. I'm gonna keep using these technologies, and we're gonna shift the planet, and we're gonna keep it at consciousness level, and we're not gonna lose that. And they tried to talk me out of it. Now, being light beings, I said, okay, we're here to help you, whatever you want to do. And what ended up happening is that the energy level stayed at a certain place, but people's consciousness started to go down because we were moving
Mhm.
away. The planet was moving away from the galactic center. And what ended up happening was this really bad combination of people knowing the power of spiritual technologies, but not having the spirituality to back it up.
Got it.
And so what happened is there was a rebellion.
Mhm.
And so some groups from Lemuria, and again, I never believed in any of this stuff. I only know that Lemurians exist because I've talked to them, so I know they exist. So there was people from Atlantis and people from Lemuria, and they sort of got together and they rebelled against me. And then I engaged in warfare, and I
Mhm.
used some horrible weapons. I don't. Somebody used some horrible weapons. And when that happened, the gods came in and they said, this has to stop.
Mhm.
And so they sent the comets that hit the ice packs on, we had like 2 mile thick ice packs, neutralized them, created the flood, wiped everything out.
Mhm.
Now, so I have to balance that. Now, think about that. 2.5 years ago, I was just a person walking around. If people think that I've been fantasizing about this my whole life, well, I've always known as a kid, never, none of this. I've just been a normal human walking around like everybody else. So 2.5 years ago, this guy shows up, and I guess, time's running out, and he says, you're king of Earth. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Mm.
And then they had to spend 2.5 years to get me ready so they could tell me this.
Which is not a long time.
No,
That's not a long time
no.
for this information. I think even for half of this information, that wouldn't be a very long time.
Yeah. So what I learned was, one of the things I learned was that, so when I talked to the Lemurians afterwards, somehow I got this, I saw Lemurians. I said, I'm going to find out if these beings exist. So I went into meditation, and I went to Mount Shasta, and I went there, and first thing they said was, they said, you're back. I said,
Mhm.
are you awake? Do you remember who you are?
Mm.
And I started off by apologizing, like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did. And they said, no, no, you don't understand. You could have come with us. You were supposed to come with us. You chose to reincarnate over and over again to punish yourself. And you forgot. You forgot who you were.
Mm.
And they said, we're, now that you're back, you're our family. They're like family members and friends. And, they said, you could have risen with us and you could have balanced it from there. But I chose to do what I did. So that's why. Answer, why am I doing these meditations? That's why. It's to balance, bring this shift. Now, if you look at, I have a graph, but if you look at the graph, you can see the actual time period where Atlantis sunk, and you go directly opposite that. And that is where we are. And we are shifting from, we left Kali Yuga in the 1700s, and we're in what's called Dwapara Yuga.
Okay.
And we're now going to shift up in the same way, as fast as we shifted down.
Yes.
So it's going to balance that way. So that's why there's this big shift, and it's going to be huge and immediate. That's why, because we have to balance the energies again. So that's where we are right now. We're like, the clock is ticking. It's before
Yes.
everything flips up.
I see it sort of like if you send a penny down a funnel and it's going to be big circles and then it's just going to go.
Yeah.
And that's where we are, the compression of time or the amplification of those energies. Really powerful. I also want to point out an observation that I don't know if you've looked at it this way, but um, your resistance to wanting to continue these high frequency energies and continue that even as in your other lifetime we were going into the denser realities. Um, it was sort of this inevitable experience because even as you were continuing these energies, you were assisting the fall that needed to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Have you looked at it that way before?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hindsight is 2020. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah. And I had so much shame over it. Now, the thing that made me realize that this was real wasn't the fact that I had a being come and energy and telepathically told me that. That's happened before. What happened after when the Pleiadians came and they told me that, and I repeated back to them, you mean blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, this deep, deep shame and sadness came up on a level I've never felt in my whole life.
Mm,
And my head didn't have any memory. I was having an emotion that with no memory connected to it. And it
yeah.
was something I'd never felt before. And that's what made me go, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
They've been telling me the truth. This, because there's no way, otherwise this wouldn't have made any sense.
Right. Right.
And so now it's not this big thing like, oh, I don't deserve to be king of earth and bring 5D. I don't deserve that. Now it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm just cleaning up my mess. That's
And
it.
yeah. And I agree that sometimes when we finally accept those things that we've been receiving, it's really, you keep saying things like, I know this probably sounds like ego or whatever, but it is truly this neutralization of the ego just happens and you're like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing then, and that's more what I receive and witness in you is just this, okay, this is what we're doing then.
Yeah.
So I love that.
So that was why. What was your second question?
How do you be a human through all of this?
Oh, yeah.
That might be a big question.
Well, as you can tell, I had to go through a process just to get to that point of acceptance without, getting wrapped up in the ego of it. Um, but how I do that, and I think this is important, it helps people.
Yes.
And one of the things that is my mission is I want to help people understand this. So our assumptions about reality create our beliefs, our actions, our reactions. So
Hmm.
if we redefine our assumptions about how this universe works, this will be very helpful. So the
Hmm.
first one is we have to get rid of the old religious idea that we're these tiny little sinful beings that were created by God, and that we have sin and karma and we're forced to do this, and we're
Yes.
waiting around for God's will to do anything, and I just want to know what my destiny is. We got to get rid of that because that's an assumption.
Yes.
If you get rid of that, we create a new assumption, which is that this third dimension is a simulation. It is a simulation, an experiment in consciousness. It is not reality.
Right.
It is a dream.
Yes.
You just think it's real. So there's a physicist out, I forget his name, but he's very popular right now on YouTube, and he talks about it. He calls it the headset.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so the thing that's great about him is that he was trying to understand consciousness from a physicist perspective, and he did these lengthy mathematical equations, and the math told him that this is an illusion.
Very cool.
Yeah, he didn't find it out through, and then of course that took, I guess, took him into spirituality, and he meditates now. But he says there's no way that we can understand true reality from within the headset. It's not possible. That's why science can't tell you if there's an afterlife or the soul exists, because science is looking at a video
From
game program.
within the parameters. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to go outside of that. That is why the protocol that Dr. Stephen Greer taught, which I do in my interdimensional meditation, that's why it works.
Yeah.
Because when you take your intent outside of Earth's gravitational field, you're
Mm.
now outside of 3D.
You're
You're
out of the
now
game. You can
you're
observe
outside of
it.
the headset.
Yes. Okay. I love
And
that.
and that's why when we're sitting here meditating, we just think we're having energy, but the light beings are like just to give you an example, one time I went out and I just went out and I was out in space and my guide showed up. And before I asked where to go, I was just looking at Earth, kind of just thinking, just daydreaming. And he comes up and he whispers in my ear and he says, Mahadeva, you're distracting everybody. And I
Mm.
looked around and there were all of these light beings looking at me, like waiting for me to tell them what to do. I didn't know who I was then. So I didn't understand what was going on.
Mm.
But they were like, yes, sir. What
Mm.
do we do now, sir? What do you want us to do? And he was like, they got stuff to do. We need to leave so that you're not distracting them. And that's what happens when a human goes out there. All of
Mm.
the light beings stop and they say, what do you need? How can we help you?
Mm.
What do you want to do? Unless you need to be taught something, unless you need some healing or you need to be taught, they're waiting. And that's why we have to ask. When we go out there, that's not enough. We have to say, are there any light beings that would like to communicate with me? Now we've made an interdimensional doorway.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're down here, this is something that I've learned from them is that imagine your best friends, your family, your children are inside of a game. Now they know that when they go into the game, they're going to forget who they are. And in fact, they might completely, totally forget everything about themselves.
Right.
They know going in that. You're like, oh, you sure you want to do that? Yes, I want to do it. And so you're like, okay, all right, I'll be here. And they're outside of the game watching. And they see us get into trouble. And they see us hit pain. And they see us get into these loops that we can't get out of. And they're looking and they can't do anything
Yeah.
because they're not allowed to
Mm-hmm.
come in and do anything. They might be able to maybe put something inside of the game, if light flickers or they see, an angel fly by or something like that. They can put that in there, but that's it. They can't show up and do what this guy did. What he did, I don't know that they were able to do that. He came in and he started destroying the game and started telling me, you're in a game.
Yeah.
You're the king of earth. You're a
Right.
deity that created this world. You're in a game. And of course, you go,
Yeah.
they weren't able to do that. And so, this is one way we know we're in a shift because the game is over. The game is
Yeah.
flashing over, over,
Right.
right? And so, they're trying to get to us, but we're still in the game.
Yeah.
For the first time in human history, we can be, to answer your question, how am I able to stay human? It's been very challenging, extremely difficult. There's been times I've wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done. Because when you know that this is a game, not just think it's a game, when you know it's a game, when you know it's not. And why am I here? Nothing has any value to me anymore. I want to go.
Yeah.
And then they started saying, you can't go, sir.
You've
you,
you've signed up for the ride, my friend.
you,
Yeah.
you've got to delete the game from inside.
Yeah.
The only person can do it. One other thing that this guy showed me is Again, this is early on, and I'm thinking that every being can go into the sun and send energy to shift Earth. And I'm thinking that's what's happening. And he says, I want to show you something. I said, okay. So we fly to the sun. He goes inside the sun and he starts chanting and sending energy, and nothing happens. And he comes out and he says, I can't do it. He says, I'm not from
Mm.
Earth. I said, only you can do it.
Aha. Yes.
So that's why you have to do it, because I
It's
can't. Otherwise, we would.
yes. I love that. I have received similar messages from many guides that the role that I play as a human is something that they can't, we need you and you need us. It's very reciprocal.
Yeah,
So I love that. I want to maybe do a second one of these, or a third and a fourth and a
I
fifth at some
love that.
point.
We can go back and forth. You can come on my
Well,
channel.
let's just keep
Yeah,
volleying back and forth. I really like that. But I do want to wrap this one up just for this time. And I want to see, first, I want to thank you.
my privilege.
And I want to see how can people get in touch with you, and what would you, yeah, where would you like to direct people?
Well, it just so happens right here. So my YouTube channel is at Thunder Wizard. So you
Love
can
it.
go and check out my channel, my videos, and of course the live streams we do every Wednesday and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. If they can't make the live stream, they can do what you did, go to the live tab and just watch any of them.
Yeah.
Uh, August 14th was really powerful. The one we just did was super powerful. They're all powerful, but
Yes.
anyway, so that's my YouTube channel, and my website is here, thunderwizard.com, and people can subscribe to my Patreon site, and I've got all kinds of different practices that they can learn. I do personal mentorship, and there's also a shop. So if people want to buy like specific videos with energy practices, they can do that. Some of them are very affordable. So that's it. It's right there. That's how to find it.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
my books can be found at michaelwilliamdenny.com, Denney.
Okay. I'm gonna link everything in the description box. I like to just click on things. So thank you for sharing all of that. I'm gonna make sure that everybody has all of that information. And yeah, you're very present here on YouTube, where this interview will be posted. So thank you so much for joining me here today, and for sharing all of this incredible truth, and for sharing more about who you are, and sharing your energy, and helping with all of the multidimensional things that you do, assisting in this big celebration at the end of one layer of the game. I appreciate you.
My privilege. Thank you. I'm very privileged to be here. I'm glad that you asked.
Mm. Okay, let's keep playing. Well, we'll see each other again soon. You'll be back on the channel soon. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who watched, and take care. Bye.